All of this has happened before, and it will all happen again. James M. Barrie, the opening to Peter Pan. And apparently, Battlestar Galactica borrowed it. And yeah, so it's either Battlestar Galactica or Peter Pan, whichever one you prefer, but Peter Pan did it first, proving that it has all happened before, and it will happen again. Yeah, how's that for justice? Okay, so this is the Tea Party Hardy channel. Welcome. We're going to try something that we thought might be fun in relationship to our namesake, because the Tea Party was an event that took place in the Revolution for American independence. So wouldn't it be fun if we did some historical comparisons between the Revolution and its aftermath and today, with the notion that it all happened before and it will all happen again. Let's see, breaking news. Watch live aerial video of LA being burned down. Yay. Hundreds of arrests in Santa Monica as the protesters linger past curfew. Double secret probation. You're on lockdown. And curfew. Double secret probation? Apparently so. Protesters linger past curfew. Looting. Car fires. Seen after peaceful event. Boy, the media will do everything they can to make this seem like a good thing. But when we went out to protest to say, we would like to have our jobs back, please, they said, you're evil, you're killing people. Really? All we did was register to protest. I wasn't one of them. I'm just saying we as in ideology. We registered. We went out. We did it peacefully. We had Antifa in our faces. Again, I didn't actually do this. It's a metaphor. And then they do this, and it's like, oh, after peaceful. I think we got a definitely different definition of peaceful. Just goes to show you what garbage our media is. All right, anyways, back to the Tea Party Hardy concept. Now let's compare that to Shay's Rebellion, which was an event that took place in 1787. So the revolution had finished the prior year. Everybody's like, oh no, it was 1776. No, that was the second year. It was a long, long war. And then some would argue that it really didn't end until the War of 1812 was finally said, okay, England, Britain, stop being booty heads. So Shay's Rebellion, what was it? It was a violent insurrection in Massachusetts countryside during the 1786 and 1787. Shay's Rebellion brought about a monetary debt crisis at the end of the American Revolutionary War. Although Massachusetts was the focal point of the crisis, other states experienced similar economic hardships. In particular, the Continental Army and state militia veterans struggled, as many received little in the way of pay or reimbursement for their military service. They were not happy about that. Among these disgruntled former soldiers was the Continental Army captain Daniel Shays, who led a violent uprising. Fire rips through Long Beach clothing store. Shay led a violent uprising against debt collection in Massachusetts. The rebellion set the stage for George Washington to return to political life, and highlighted the weaknesses of that were inherent with the Articles of the Confederation. Because it's 1787 and we haven't had a president of the United States in the way that we know now. We were under the guise of the once again, I wasn't there. It's just an ideology. It was not alive in 1785 or 76. Yeesh, people. Set the stage for George Washington's return to the political life and highlighted the weaknesses inherent with the Articles of the Confederation. The United States emerged after Shay's Rebellion as a stronger nation with a new Constitution. That's when the Constitution was born. That's why the Constitution is 11 years older than the country. And George Washington as its first president in the way that we know presidents. Because before, they rotated presidents like, hopefully, people change underwear, for the Articles of the Confederation. And I don't even remember how many we had, but it was a lot in that 11 years. So Shay's Rebellion brought that on. Now, this is from Washington's webpage at Mount Vernon. Let's take a look over here. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, let's take a look at what the History Channel has to say about it. History Channel says, what caused Shay's Rebellion? Well, I already read that to you, so I'm not going to do it again. The rebellion begins. Farmers first attempted peaceful means to settle their issues. So yeah, it was a peaceful event for 5 minutes. Peaceful attempt in Massachusetts that began to take direct action against the debtors' courts. Committees of the town leaders drafted a document of grievances and proposed reforms, some considered radical for the legislature in the Boston to enact. Yeah, they got really brutal in Massachusetts. Hello, it's the state with the witch trials, okay? But other actions began to take place. In Northampton, Captain Joseph Hines led several hundred men to block judges from entering the courthouse. They were joined by a contingent from Amherst and several hundred more men from elsewhere. In Worcestershire, judges were blocked from holding court by crowds of hundreds of armed men. Michigan? When the militia was called in, those who refused to answer, and many joined the crowd around the courthouse. Daniel Shays, for whom the rebellion was eventually named, was a farmer in Pelham and an ex-soldier who fought at Bunker Hill and other significant revolutionary battles. So this dude was rather prestigious, to say the least. Now, some would say, well, what about Kaepernick? Okay, I guess, okay. Shays became involved with the insurgents sometime in the summer of 1786 and had taken part in the Northampton action. He was offered a leadership position in August but refused. Well, anyways, he's going to change his mind. Now, a concerned Henry Knox, as in Fort Knox for us modern-day people, but Henry Knox was the artilleryman who served alongside of Washington, particularly at the first victory after the crossing of the Delaware. And I have, if you watch my video on the review of Washington from the History Channel, I talk a lot about Henry Knox in that one. Okay, during the Revolutionary War, and the first and future U.S. Secretary of the War wrote to George Washington, now it's called Secretary of Defense, they changed the name in the past, I'll leave it at that, George Washington, 1786, to warn him about these rebels. Now, check this out, history nuts, modern purveyors of history, of what's happening right now across the country. They see the weakness of government. Blue states. They feel at once their own poverty compared with the opulent, and their own force, and they are determined to make use of the latter in order to remedy the former. God, people used to actually speak so intelligently in those days. The creed is that the property of the United States has been protected from the confiscations of Britain by the joint exertions of all, and therefore ought to be the common property of all. Bernie Sanders. Our government must be braced, changed, or altered to secure our lives and property. Definitely a Bernie bro. We imagined that the mildness of our government and the virtue of the people were so correspondent that we were not, as other nations, requiring brutal force to support the laws. But we find we are men, actual men, possessing all the turbulent passions belonging to that animal, and that we must have a government proper and adequate for him. So, how much has changed? Not that much. The insurgents found support in unexpected places. Chief Justice William Whitting of the Berkshire County Court was a wealthy conservative who publicly spoke out in favor of the rebellion, accusing the wealthy state legislatures of making money off the impoverished farmers and claiming the farmers were obligated to disrupt the government in response. The more you know about this, they were really, really hammering the farmers. So they sold their crops and they were broke already. It was bad. So the fuss is the guns. Legendary patriot Samuel Adams, the beer guy for us modern people, the second cousin to President John Adams, however, called for the execution of the rebellious farmers. Yeah. Rebellion for me, not for thee. Which is the way it ended up playing out, because you had this and the Whiskey Rebellion post-revolution, and they're like, dude, Thomas Jefferson on the Whiskey Rebellion's like, yeah, it was fun while it lasted, but no, you can't have order if you're going to constantly keep burping and having these. You can't. It's not a functioning society, and it's definitely not civil. However, a bill was passed. Let's see, you're going to love this. However, a bill was passed excusing the sheriffs from responsibility if they killed any insurgents. So far, that hasn't happened in the modern world. But when you hear Barack Obama constantly say, this isn't who we are, this isn't what America is, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's lying to you. Take your pick. However, a bill was passed excusing sheriffs from responsibility if they killed any insurgents, and declaring harsh punishments for the rebels in custody. Soon after, the legislature suspended the writ of habeas corpus for a period of time. In other words, you could be arrested and held without charges. Another bill prescribed the death penalty for militiamen who took part in the protest. This isn't who we are. This isn't Americans. Shut your pie hole, Mr. Obama. You don't know what you're talking about, or you're lying. Take your pick. The situation continued to escalate. In December of 1786, a militia assaulted a farmer and his family in Groton, arresting and crippling the farmer, which further fanned the flames of the insurrection. Yet do you think? In January of 1787, Governor Bowdoin hired his own army privately, funded by Boston businessmen. And if I said his name wrong, I apologize to his heirs. Some 4,400 men under the command of General Benjamin Lincoln, no relation, doesn't say that here, but it does in other research that I've done, no relation to Abraham Lincoln, were directed to put down the insurgency. To put it down. That's military talk for kill. Attack on Springfield Arsenal. Shays and the other leaders made plans. See, now this is where we've got to be careful that we're going from here to here. Shays and the other leaders made plans to raid the federal arsenal in Springfield to procure weapons. On the snow-covered morning of January 25th, 1787, 1,200 men approached the arsenal. Arsenal means where they keep the weapons. Some men had guns, while some carried, oh my God, they really did, clubs and pitchforks. It's like, really? That's not just in the movies? No, they really did. You can hurt people with clubs and pitchforks, it turns out. General Shepherd predicted the assault and was waiting for the arsenal. I wonder why it isn't, waiting. Oh, well, whatever. Shepherd believed that the insurgents planned to overthrow the government. Because they did. Meanwhile, General Lincoln's troops marched from Worcestershire to Springfield to provide additional defense. Two other groups of insurgents traveled to join Shays. Another rebellion leader was Luke Day, who had ridden to Quebec with the famous American trader Benedict Arnold in 1775. And he would head north with the 400 men. Eli Parsons would lead 600 men from the Berkshires. This is a lot of people. There were thousands in Santa Monica. Okay, you're right. You should rest your case. I concede. It's not that many compared to the current ones. And that's just Santa Monica. That's not even dealing with the rest of the country's rebellions. As they approached the arsenal, shots were fired at Shay and his men. The first two were warning shots over their heads. Well, that was nice. Yeah, but the further shots left 2 rebels dead and 20 wounded. So much for the warning. The rest retreated to Chicopee. Again, I don't know how to say these names from back there. Chicopee, sending a message back to Shepherd demanding the dead for burial. Lincoln sent troops to Connecticut River to prevent the advances from Day's group. Shays and his men fled to Petersham. Lincoln followed, causing them to scatter. Shays and his wife fled to Vermont. So what happened afterwards? Well, by the summer of 1787, many of the participants in the rebellion received pardons from the newly elected Governor John Hancock. Yes, that John Hancock, from the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The new legislature placed a moratorium on debts and cut taxes, easing the economic burden that the rebels were struggling to overcome. Some rebels were publicly paraded to the gallows before release. And that was on purpose. For those of you that don't know what a gallows is, congratulations. It is the thing that you stand on before they hang you. Yes, that's what a gallows is. And so they took them out there and put the rope around their neck. And then instead of dropping them to hang them, somebody yelled, "Psych! Just kidding!" I'm actually just kidding about them yelling psych and just kidding. But everything else actually really did happen. 2, however, were executed for burglary. Woo! That's not going to work well in the modern world. It's going to be the other way around. Shays was pardoned the following year. He returned to Pelham briefly, then moved to Sparta, New York, where his legend made him a popular attraction for visitors. He died in 1825 and was laid to rest in an unmarked grave. Sorry, kids. Find grave? He's not there. Shays is memorialized by the Daniel Shays Highway in western Massachusetts, a section of U.S. Route 202 1935 that runs through Pelham. The significance is we moved from the Articles of Confederation, we moved into a constitution, which has eventually the Bill of Rights, and George Washington becomes president. So you can see it's kind of a confusing mix the way this works. This isn't who we are, because if this is who we are, then we're going to come down and crush you like a bug. And then after we crush you like a bug, then I'm going to borrow from the movie Schindler's List. When they shoot the Jewish woman architect, who said, if you do this, it's going to collapse. So he shoots her and says, we don't take orders from Jews. And then after he shoots her, he goes, go make the corrections. It's kind of the same idea here. After the rebellion, they said, all right, you guys made some good points. And they did let them live. But they also crushed them, and it was a straight-out gunfight. So I don't know how this is going to end, but we are supposed to stop it. They did stop the rebellion. You're not supposed to be doing this stuff. We will listen to you if you make a good point, as everybody has pointed out. Looking at the death of George Floyd, or is it Floyd George? No, George Floyd, sorry. Everybody's on board for the fact that that does not look good. It does not look right. You have to let due process take place. You have to hear both sides of the story. And if they don't have a leg to stand on, sorry, that pun was not on purpose, then he's going down. But we have to do that. And since this is the Tea Party Outer channel, we're doing a reflection back between the revolution and now, and post-revolution, let me suggest this as well. John Adams got into a stinkload of trouble because he chose to defend the British soldiers who were involved in the Boston Massacre. And everybody hated him for that. But because he did that, he established when we became the United States of America, he established the notion that every person must have, even if provided by the government, legal representation. That came out of that moment. Adams has gotten a lot of credit in the last few years. It's the first time in 200 years that he did. And it's good that he did, because he's an amazing man. You know, watch the HBO series if nothing else. It's a very, very good starter. So, what was our opening? All this has happened before and all of it will happen again. I hope you enjoyed this comparison between the revolution and the current world. And if it does well, we'll do it again. And if it doesn't do well, we might do it again anyways if it's relevant. Because this is the Tea Party Hardy channel, where we will see you in the future.